Good day, everyone, and welcome to our lesson 7. I'm still your lecturer, Mr. Magia H, and we're going to be continuing with chapter 2, the basic mathematics concept, where we're going to be covering fraction and for basic operation. So, under today's lesson, you need to have already covered lesson 6, which you might have need to make sure that you understood the concept covered there. And today's lesson will be covering page 83 to 89 to 93 of your textbook, which is the Finance in Media 4th edition. And here I also uploaded a link which you can also use after the lesson, which you can be helpful and beneficial to you for you to actually understand the division of fractions. So under today's lesson, these are the learning outcomes that you should be able to achieve by the end of the lesson. To appreciate the application and relevance of fraction in everyday situation and transaction. See the mathematical construct as a useful tool and not just only to pass this module, and know how to add and subtract, multiply and divide fraction. Perform calculation involving fraction by using the 4 basic operation, which is also adding, subtracting, but this time we'll also be taking a look into fraction that are proper fraction, improper fraction, mixed fraction as well. So all this type of fraction we're going to be adding them together, subtracting them together, dividing them together, and then as well multiplying all of them together. So we're going to be learning the concept behind and the mathematical rules that gets to be applied when working with fractions. So under our previous lesson earlier on, I think somewhere around lesson 1 and 2, we did cover something called numbers, where we talked about the whole numbers, that these are all positive numbers starting from 1 uh, to infinity. So these numbers and integers, the whole numbers and integer, are something that always plays a role within fraction and our day-to-day life. So please make sure that you understand them very carefully. And then we also talked about the prime numbers, where the prime numbers are numbers that can only be divided by 1 and itself to give a whole number. So for example, we've got 1, 2, 3, 5, 7, 11, 13, 17, 19. So this number cannot be divided by any other number except themselves to give 1. If we take a look into 4, 4 can be divided by itself and give 1, but it can also be divided by 2 to give 2. So therefore it cannot qualify to be what we call a prime number. So therefore prime numbers are only numbers that can only be divided by themselves alone, and then they give 1. So no other number can be used to divide them to give another number. So meaning that most of those numbers, we found that they fall within what we call odd numbers, majority of them, because they fall within the odd numbers. Yes, so when they fall within odd numbers, normally odd numbers are not divisible by 2 or mostly many other numbers, but majority of them they can only be divided by themselves to only give 1, and any other number will divide them and give recurring decimals or give us a fraction that have got decimals. So these numbers, if they are divided by any number, they will give a fraction except themselves, which they will give us 1. And then we've got the odd and even numbers. So odd and even numbers, we'll start with the even numbers. Even numbers are those numbers which are a multiplication of 2, and they can be divided by 2 and then one of them within the even numbers to give us another whole number that is within again the what, the even number, or 1. And then we've got the odd numbers. Some of the odd numbers can be divided by 3, and while they're divided by 3 can still give us a whole number that is still within either the even numbers or the odd numbers. And these are some of the odd numbers that are listed here, which are commonly used: 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, 11, 21, 23, 25, 27, going upwards up to infinity. So normally they always end with 1, 3, 5, 7, 9. So if you're working with a fraction and the number ends with something like 5, 7, 9, 3 or 1, just know that this is actually an odd number. And if a number ends with 0, 2, 4, 6, 8, just know that this number is an even number. So I'm also going to explain the importance of these when you're dealing with fractions. So it's going to be easier if you understand the even and the odd number, so that when you're working with fraction, when it comes time to simplify the fraction, you will have to first pick up whether this is an odd number or even number. So let's also take a look into the revision that we did on lesson 6. So on lesson 6, the first part that we did was the purpose of a fraction, where we covered the purpose of the fraction, the usefulness of the fraction, that the fraction we use them on a day-to-day basis, and then we use them to split or to allocate resources so that the resources cannot be under allocated or over allocated, and then to also measure the percentage of share of an object or of a resources, to say that this kind of project actually took this much percentage of the resources that we actually have. So I'll just use an example to say that when you get to receive your salary or when you get to receive your allowance, so what actually happens is that you get to split your allowance into transportation money, food money, rental. So all of those, they're taking a share within your allowance. So meaning that each and every share within there will represent a fraction out of what you actually get to receive as an allowance. To say that out of the 1000 that I receive, 200 is for my transportation. So that's 200 out of 1000 that you actually receive. So we refer it as a fraction or as a split or share of a resource. And then under a fraction, we did determine that we have got what we call a numerator and a denominator, where the numerator sits on top of a fraction and the denominator sits below the division line. And then later on, we also discovered that when you're working with fraction, most of the time you might have to actually get to simplify a fraction. And for you to do that, you will need what we call the LCD or the LCM, which is the lowest common multiplier. And how we use the lowest common multiplier is that we identify the most common number that is the lowest for both the multiplication of this number, to say that if we get to have 60 within a fraction, we know that we can either use these two numbers as their lowest common multiplier and use it as a denominator, or either as a what? As a lowest common multiplier, to simplify the numerator and the denominator. So how do we simplify a fraction? So a fraction can be simplified only to get a smallest equivalent fraction that we can easily get to understand better and get accurate results at a simple way. For example, if you find yourself having 50 out of 100, so some people, when it comes to numbers, they will think that it's a lot in terms of saying 50 out of 100, but 50 out of 100, it's the same as saying 1 out of 2. So that is equivalent to 1 out of 2. So we can simplify 50 out of 100 by dividing everything with 50, which means that when we say 50 divided by 50 as our numerator, we're going to get 1. And when we say 100 divided by 50, it's going to say 2, meaning that the equivalent fraction to 50 out of 100 will be 1 out of 2. So that's simplification of what we call a fraction. So that is all what we covered in lesson 6. So let's dig in on lesson 7 and see what it has for us today. So here it says that fraction and the four basic operations. So this is something that we normally work with. I've already given you guys an example based on your allowance or your salary that you get to split, to say that this is how much I use this for. So if you actually get to calculate the amount that you took against the money that you receive, you'll actually get portion for each and every money that you spend on each and every item that you do within the house. So you'll also get to see that, okay, this money is actually equaling to 5% of the money. So for you to get that 5%, you'll actually have to perform a fraction out of what you're actually spending, how much are you spending for, and from what money is that money coming from. So therefore, those are things that we do on a daily basis. So our first lesson in terms of the fraction and the four basic operations, we're going to start with the first one, which is the adding fraction. So adding fraction, here it says that adding and subtracting of a fraction. So it says that fraction cannot be subtracted or added if they do not have the same denominator. And to achieve this, the lowest common multiplier must be found for the denominator of the fraction that have to be added or subtracted. So meaning that if you are working with fraction, it is important that you first identify the denominator within those fractions, to say that if you are adding or subtracting, are the denominators the same? So if the denominators are not the same, Therefore, we need to find the lowest common multiplier. Once we find the lowest common multiplier, therefore, we can be able to simplify the fraction, and both of the fraction can have the same common multiplier as a common denominator, and then we can just only add the numerator. But we don't just only add the numerator just as they are. We need still to convert the numerator based on what we did to the denominator. So under this lesson, I'm going to be showing you that. So this is the steps that needs to be followed when performing a fraction where you get to add two fraction or subtract two fraction. The principles still remain the same. The only difference is that the other one were multiplying, the other one was the other one was adding, the other one was subtracting. So our fraction is read as follows. So we have got 2 out of 3 plus 3 out of 5, and then it says that find the LCM of the 3 and 5. So when we're adding the fraction 2 over 3 plus 3 over 5, the first thing that we do is to identify what types of fraction are there that we're actually adding together. Is it an improper fraction? Is it a proper fraction or a mixed fraction? So once we identify those, then we can move forward and try to solve the scenario. So ours are actually what we call proper fraction. The numerator is actually smaller than the denominator. So therefore, there's no need for us to simplify or do anything. The second part is to identify whether the denominator are the same. So if the denominators are not the same, therefore we can actually get to apply the lowest common multiplier for the denominator to make sure that it is common for both all of them. So the lowest common denominator. So the step that you can follow is the following. You can go and say we have got 3 as a denominator for the first fraction and 5 as a denominator for the second fraction. So let's find the lowest common multiplier. So you're going to do a multiplication of 3 and a multiplication of 5 until you find a common number in within that is going to appear first for both. So that number that appears first, we refer it as a lowest common multiplier. So we use it to simplify the fraction and give each and every fraction what? That denominator. So under this fractions that we have got denominators which is 3 and 1. So if you say 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, so you'll find that okay, we've got 15 this side. You can even go further, you can do them simultaneously. So when you perform this, perform them simultaneously to say that okay, it's 3, 6, and then this side it's 5, 10, 15, so there's nothing yet. And then on the other side, then you're gonna go and say 9, 12, and then the other side you're gonna go and say 20, 25, and then this side you're gonna go and say 15, 15, 18. So already now you can pick up, we've got 15 now on the multiplication of 3, and then we've got 5 on the we've got 15 again on the multiplication of 5. So that becomes what we call our lowest common multiplier. So you can actually get to apply that. So therefore 15 becomes the lowest common multiplier. So the second part that you're gonna do is to draw a line and place the lowest common multiplier underneath the division line. So this is the division line, and we put 15 as our common multiplier, which is going to be our new denominator. Then the second step is now to convert the first fraction, which is 2 out of 3, into having a denominator of 15. So the things that we're going to do is that we're going to take the first fraction and divide its denominator into the lowest common factor to find what? The value that is there. So we're going to go and say 15 divided by 3, which is the denominator this side, to find the multiplier that was used to get to 15 from 3. So we're going to say 15 divided by 3, giving us 5. So therefore we're going to go and say 5 multiplied by 2 to get the new numerator to match the common multiplier of the denominator. So therefore we're going to go and have 5 multiplied by 2, giving us 10. And then we're gonna go and apply the same on the second fraction to go and say 15 divided by 3. What was the multiplier that was used to get to 15? So we're gonna go and say 15 divided by 3. So it was 3 times, so therefore 3 multiplied by 3, giving us 9. So therefore we're gonna have plus 9 on top of the division line. So meaning that our numerator will therefore be having 10 plus 9 over 15. So which is this part, this side? Place the answer 9 above the division line next to the plus sign. So we've got 10 plus 9 over 15. So then we can add the numerators and we get what? 19 out of 15. So once we get 19 out of 15 as a final fraction, what we get to ask ourselves is the fraction improper, proper fraction, or it can still be simplified? So if it's an improper fraction, it can be simplified. Some of them can be simplified. So we start by simplifying them first. If they can't be simplified, we convert them into what we call mixed fraction, where we're going to have a whole number and a fraction. So this one that we have, it's 19 over 15. Because it's already having 19, 19 is a prime number, and prime numbers cannot be divided by any other number, and which means that this cannot be simplified because the number below is not, also it's 15. 15 can be divided by 5, can be divided by 3, but all those prime numbers cannot be used to divide 19. So 19 is a prime number itself, so therefore this function is at its simplest form. So the only question for us is to actually convert this improper fraction, because 19 is bigger than 15, into mixed fraction. How many times does 15 goes into 19, and what is the remainder of the value that is left after 15 goes there one time? How many times? So it goes one time and leaves the remainder of 4 out of 15. So meaning that our fraction will actually be 1 4 out of 15. This will be the simplest fraction, which is going to be an improper, which is going to be a mixed fraction. So another method that some people get to use is to say that if the common factor is 15, so therefore, for us to change the denominators to 15, let's take a look first into the first fraction, which is 2 out of 3. So if it is 2 out of 3 and we're trying to get 3 to become 15, we need to multiply this by actually what? 5. So your mental arithmetic skills had to be up to date. So therefore, you'll go and say 3 multiplied by 5, and you're going to also do the same on the numerator and say 2 multiplied by 5, that will give you 10 over 15 already. And then you can go and save the plus sign in between here. Then you can put the plus sign in between, and once you put the plus sign in between, you're gonna move towards what to call 3 out of 15. And then you say 3 out of 15, we found the common multiplier, so to be 15. So therefore, if the common multiplier is 15 and we want to convert the denominator into 15, how much should we multiply it by? So therefore, that will be 3, meaning that you're going to multiply 3, the numerator by 3 and the denominator by 3. Therefore, your fraction will end up changing to 9 over 15. Now, because you'll be having 10 over 15 plus 3 out of 15, you can actually get to add the numerator, which is going to be 10 plus 9 over 15, because the numerator is already the same. So you don't add the the denominators. So you don't add the denominators, only the numerator, because denominators are the same. So that is another method that you can actually get to use. So let's continue and see what we have forward. So I've got what to call the explanation in terms of subtracting a fraction. That subtracting a fraction is the same. You apply the same process as the addition. You just only replace the positive sign with a negative sign, which is for subtraction. So here we've got an activity where we're actually adding what we call improper uh, mixed fraction. So when you're adding mixed fraction, the first thing that you're actually going to perform is to actually convert the mixed fraction into what we call improper fraction, and then from there you can try to see if the denominators are the same, and then you can actually get to identify the common factor for those denominator, and then from there you convert all the fraction based on the lowest common multiplier, and then you can add the numerators. So let's perform one for this. So if we're to perform this one, we're going to first convert the fraction into an improper fraction, where when we perform the fraction into improper fraction, it's actually going to say 4 multiplied by 5, which we covered on our previous lesson, plus 3. So the denominator multiplies the whole number, and then from whatever answer you get, you add it with the numerator. So therefore, 4 multiplied by 5 plus 3, that's going to give us 23 over 4. and then we're gonna have our plus sign, and then you're gonna go and say, okay, on the second one I've got 6 whole number 1 out of 3. So if we're converting this, it will be 3 multiplied by 6 giving us 18, and therefore plus 1 giving us 19 over 3. So this is the improper fraction that we get from converting the mixed fraction into a what we call the mixed fraction into an improper fraction. Then the second part is then where we get to ask ourselves to say that, are the denominators the same? If the denominators are the same, we can add the numerators, but if not, therefore we will have to actually get to apply a fraction. So therefore when we're going to apply a fraction, so this is how the fraction is going to look like. I just need to quickly access my toolbar, which I can't see. Okay, just a moment. Okay, here we are. We have got our fraction now on our screen. So then we can actually get to identify the lowest common multiplier for this fraction, to say that we've got 4 and 3. So multiplication of 4 will be 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, 24. And then let's do for 3. We'll have 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18. So already once we reach 18, we can already picked up, we've got 12 from both sides, which is our lowest common multiplier. So we're gonna have 12 as our lowest common multiplier, so we put it as a denominator. So once we put it as a denominator, then we start working our fraction up to say that let's convert the first fraction based on the new lowest common multiplier. So we go and say, what can we use to multiply 4 to be converted to 12? So it's it's actually 3 times. So therefore we're gonna multiply everything under this fraction by 3. So I'm just gonna apply the other method first, and then which will allow us to perform the part which I want us to understand using another method. So all I was saying is to say that if you identify the lowest common multiplier, so you can put it on both fraction as the new denominator, and therefore say for the first fraction to convert it into 12, the denominator into 12. Actually, we're gonna go and say 12 divided by 4 to find the multiplier that was used. So therefore 12 divided by 4, so that's gonna give us 3. So meaning that everything on this fraction that we have, 23 out of 4, will have to be multiplied by what? By 3 to actually give us a denominator of 12 and a new numerator, because we are converting this fraction to have both of them to have what? The lowest common multiplier. So for this one, we've got 12 already, which is the 4 multiplied by 3. So there's no need for us to do that. So what is left for us is to actually multiply the numerator with the common multiplier, which was used to multiply what? 4 into turn it into 12. So which is 3. So therefore that will be 23 multiplied by 3, giving us 69. And then we're gonna move towards the second fraction. The second fraction, the denominator that we found, or the lowest common multiplier, is 12. So therefore to convert 3 into 12, therefore we're gonna go and say 12 divided by 3. We found that it's actually 4 that was used as a multiplier to convert 3 into 12. Therefore we're gonna use that 4 to multiply our numerator, because it's already, our denominator is already multiplied by 4. So therefore we're going to have 19 multiplied by 4. So therefore we can use our calculator to go and say 4 multiplied by 3. So 19 multiplied by 4, which is going to give us 76. So therefore we're going to have 76. So here we are, we have got 76. Now both our numerator and denominators are the same. So therefore what is left for us is to actually go and add the numerator and the denominator. So therefore we're gonna go there and add the two, that is the numerator and the denominator. So therefore we're gonna be having 69 plus 76 as our addition of the fraction, which is all of this, it's equals to. So all of these will be equals to 76 plus we're gonna have 69 plus 76 that give us 145. So it's going to give us a 145. So it's just 145. So now our fraction comes back to 145 out of 12. So the last part that we now have to say, we have got the final answer for adding this fraction. So the next to actually identify to say that if we have got all this as the last part of our fraction or as our last answer of our fraction, can this be simplified? That is the question. So the first thing that we normally do for us to to identify if whether this can be simplified. So there are odd and even numbers that we explained earlier on. So that's the first thing you identify. Is the numerator and the odd number both falling within the same number system, which is the odd numbers or the even numbers? So if it's falling within the odd numbers, you are 1369. The second question is to ask if one of this number is a prime number. So if it's a prime number, it means that it can only be divided by itself to give another to give one, and nothing else can divide it. So under this question, nope, they are not falling within prime numbers. 145 can be divided by another number. Um, so therefore this cannot fall within the prime part. Then the second question is to ask if they fall within all even numbers, therefore you can actually get to simplify them. If they fall within even numbers, simplify them because they can all have be divided. You are all able to divide them by 2 and get a simplified version of that fraction. And then if they are odd numbers and they do not fall within prime numbers, therefore you find a prime number that can actually be used to divide that. For example, I've got 3, 5. 3 and 5 and 7 can actually be used in some of the fraction to simplify. So therefore you'll have to use those to simplify. But if you cannot simplify, that means that fraction ends the way it is. Unlike the one that said this, so when we take a look at the one we have, it's 145 out of 12. So it's a mix of both the what we call odd numbers and even number. So the only number that can go on both the even number and the odd number is 3, and therefore 3 cannot be used where the number is ending by 5 because it will leave a remainder. So therefore this fraction cannot be simplified. Therefore we'll just have to only simplify this fraction by converting it into a mixed fraction because an improper fraction. So therefore for this fraction we're gonna go and say 145 divided by 12. So for this fraction we're gonna go and say 145 divided by 12. So 145 divided by 12, 12 will go actually 12 times into 145, because if you remember arithmetic, 12 squared is actually 144. So meaning that it's already going 12 times on 145 and it's gonna remainder of 1. So therefore our final answer will be 12, 1 out of 2. So this will be our actually our final number. And then we can move forward to number 3. So to number 2 question, which under number 2 it says 1 out of 3, 1 out of 3 minus 2 out of 7. So under chain we still have to convert first the improper fraction into proper fraction, and into improper fraction, and then get to multiply and then get to subtract the other fraction. And we still have the same basic principle that we did on the other side. So when you convert this, this, so when we get to convert this, so this is actually gonna happen. I'm gonna say 3 multiplied by 3, which is gonna give us 9, and then we're gonna go and say that 9 plus 1 giving us 10 over 3. So once we have got our 10 over 3, we can go and say minus, what is the next fraction? So the next fraction is already sitting as an what we call an improper as a proper fraction. So there isn't much to do within this fraction. So it's 2 out of 7. So now we try to find the lowest common multiplier for the denominator since they are not the same. Okay, my number off, so I couldn't be able to type the 7. It was just taking me back. So from there we have to find the lowest common multiplier for both of these fractions. To say that what is the lowest common multiplier for this fraction? So once we find the lowest common multiplier for this fraction, we can be able to use that to actually solve this fraction. For the lowest common multiplier for our fraction, you will perform this on your side and confirm, and then you can follow up with the lesson. So in terms of the lowest common multiplier for 3 and 7, so you're going to go and still perform 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, just like that, continuing. You will still find that, okay, for this one, the lowest common multiplier will actually be 21. So that will be the lowest common multiplier, because we're going to say 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, 21. And then you can continue going forward. But when you start with 7, when it's going to say 7, 14, 21, already you can find that we've got a common number in both within, which is 21. That becomes our lowest common multiplier. So you're going to have 21, and then you're going to go on the top part of numerator. Therefore, instead of using the previous version that I used up there, I'm going to use the one that we covered on the explanation of addition and subtraction. So under this one, we're going to go and say we have got a common factor, a lowest common denominator of 21. Let's now convert our numerators based on the multiplication or that we used that we used to find the lowest common multiplier of 21. So for the first fraction, we're going to go and say we've got 10 over 3, where 3, how much was 3 multiplied by to be converted to 21? So we can just go and say 21 divided by 3. It will give us the multiplier that was used to get that. So the multiplier is actually 7. So therefore, we're going to go and say 7 multiplied by 10. Therefore, that will give us 70. And then we're going to go and say minus. We put our minus sign, and then we're going to go to the second fraction and say what was the multiplier used to actually convert 7 into 21 as the denominator. So therefore, that amount we're going to use it to multiply the numerator and get the new numerator. So therefore, we're going to say 21 divided by 7 giving us 3, and then you're going to go and say 3 multiplied by 2 giving you 6. So once you have got your 6, then you can go forward and go and say 70 minus 6. So you're going to go and say 70 minus 6. So you will go and have your 70 minus 6. So 70 minus 6 will actually give us 54. So once it gives us 54, we're going to have, I think it's 64, not 54, 64. So we're going to have 64, and then we're going to move towards the numerator. So under the numerator, might be 21. So now we have got our full fraction to say that, okay, this is the fraction that we have. So the numbers that are within the fraction, let's identify the final fraction. The final fraction is an improper fraction. Can it be simplified to find an equivalent fraction that is smaller in value that we can be able to work out with? So therefore, 64 is in the numerator, it's an even number, and 21 is an odd number. So let's try to think of a common number that we can use. Since they are both odd even numbers, the common number that can normally be used first is 3. So if we can try and go and say, let's try and see if 3 can go into 64 without leaving a reminder. So nope, it will leave a reminder there for you. So meaning that this it's already under its simplest form if there is no other number that you can think of that can be used, because already if 3 is out, then no other number can be used. So let's try to see if 7 can actually go into 64, because it can go into 21. 64 divided by 7, nope, it cannot. So meaning that we are out of option to leave this as an improper fraction and convert it into what we call a mixed fraction. So when we convert this into a mixed fraction, we're gonna go and say how many times does 21 goes into 64. That will be 3 times, and once it's 3 times, we're gonna have a remainder of 1 over 21. So that will be our last fraction. Say that this is our last fraction, so which means that this is under its simplest form as a mixed fraction. So that is all in terms of adding and subtracting fraction. So the most commonly thing that we perform is that we need to find the lowest common factor for the denominators if they are not the same. Once they are the same, we then try to simplify both the fraction based on the multiplication factor, that was lying factor, that was used to convert the denominators into a lowest common factor for each. For this one, it was 3, one it was 4, meaning that the numerator for this one, 3, will also be multiplied by 3. For this one, the numerator was multiplied by 4, so the denominator was multiplied by 4, meaning that the numerator will be multiplied by 4. And then we're going to have a common denominator for both fractions, then just only add the numerator, our final. And that is it in terms of addition and subtraction. And then we can look in terms of multiplication of a fraction. So multiplication of a fraction as follows. You just numerate with the numerator and then multiply the denominator with the denominator. So this one, it's in simplest form, and then later on simplify the equation. So under this one, it's you have got 2 out of 3 multiplied by 3 out of 5. So the mathematic rule that gets to be applied when multiplying fraction is that just multiply the numerator by the numerator, the denominator by the denominator, and then later on try to simplify the fraction. And if it can't be simplified, leave it as it is. So here we're going to say 2 times 3, that's going to give us 6, and then 3 times 5, that's going to give us 15. And then we've got 6 out of 15. So these two numbers, 6 falls within the what we call the even numbers, 15 fall within the odd numbers, but we have got a common factor within these numbers which can actually be used to divide both of them, which is 3. 3 can actually go into 6 as well, even though it's an odd number, because 6 is a multiplication of 3. So therefore 15 is also falling within the multiplication of 3. So therefore we can use 3 to actually get to simplify this equation by saying 6 divided by 3 and 15 divided by 3, and find its other simplest version. If the simplest version gives us a prime number, therefore that will be the last simplified version of that fraction. But if it gives us another number that can still continue to be simplified, we simplify going forward. So under this one, if you say 6 divided by 3 gives us 2, which is a prime number, 15 divided by 3, which gives us 5, this is also a prime number. So therefore the simplest version for this is actually 2 out of 5, because we only have prime numbers left on our simplified fraction. So therefore, which is easier to work, and the final answer, if it was in decimal, that would be 0.4. So in terms of this one, I'm gonna leave this as a part of a tutorial question for you guys that you're gonna perform, and you're gonna be following your textbook part. You're gonna be following your textbook to see what is actually based on your textbook. So I'm just gonna perform only the second one. I'm gonna leave the first one for you guys to actually get to perform. So let's perform the second one. So performing the second one, this is what we get. So it's 3, 1 out of 10. So on our previous question, this is still the same, just that I only changed the multiplication sign. So we can play around with all of these fractions and see if we can be able to solve those through the multiplication rule of fractions. So therefore, we have already identified from our previous lesson that 1 out of 3 is equivalent to 10 out of 3 as a improper fraction. and then we're going to have our multiplication sign, and then we can have our other fraction, which is 2 out of 7. So we're saying that for this fraction, once it's simplified into improper and proper fraction, therefore we can actually get to work out this fraction and say, let's see what will be the final answer applying the rule of multiplication. So I'm going to say 2 multiplied by 10, or 10 multiplied by 2. This is going to give us 20. So we're going to have 20, and then we're going to go and say 3 multiplied by 7, giving us 21. So already this fraction is under the odd and even numbers, and both of them cannot actually be multiplied by they do not have any common factor that can be used to simplify the fraction. The fraction, if you close look into it, you will notice it's already a odd fraction. So therefore there's no simplifying into odd, say that we can convert into a mixed, because it's not an improper fraction. So we leave it as it is. So this becomes our final answer, 20 over 21. And then we can now move towards the division. So in terms of the dividing the fraction, so dividing fraction have got some of its own principles and rules that can become tricky if you do not get to make sure that you understand the concept. So under the division, the concept is that when you're dividing a fraction by another fraction, the division fraction will actually change to become a multiplication sign. And then once it changes, the second fraction, only the second fraction, will be converted upside down. So meaning that if we take a look into this fraction, because we already have 2 out of 3 being divided by another fraction which have got a division of 3 over 5 divided by 5. So therefore this actually changes our division sign now to multiplication sign. And once it changed to multiplication sign, therefore we're gonna have so we have to swap or do the upside down of 3 out of 5, which is our second fraction. So therefore it becomes 5 out of 3. So this is sort of like they are using sort of like a principle that we actually performed earlier on our lesson, to say minus times minus gives you positive. So since we are working with division, we have got division and division and division, which will actually change to one of them to multiplication. So therefore just think of it as that application of that rule where minus 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 gives you positive. And then here we are saying divide by divide. One divide, the middle divide turns into a multiplication because they have got the same weight, so it can change it to negative subtraction. So division and multiplication go hand in hand together. So the division line, the division that is in between, change to multiplication, and the second fraction change into what? We convert it upside down. So if we take a look into the last part, the last equation that I give, I'm still gonna use this one. I'm gonna leave the upper one always for you guys to actually get to perform, and then from there you can actually get to see if you manage to score everything right. If you need assistance, just send me the link or an email to say that I've performed this. I just want you to confirm if this is true. But you can still capture this on your scientific calculator if you have got a scientific calculator, a sharp FX scientific calculator, and just capture it as it is. It will give you the final answer. Then you can confirm with yours to make sure that the final answer is 100% correct. So for this one, we already identify that 1 out of 10, it's actually 10 over 3. So this is all therefore divided by this is all divided by 3. This is divided by 2 over 7. So what we are saying is that since we have got triple divide, middle divide will change into multiplication, so that will be 10 out of 3. So therefore when this one change into multiplication, we get up the other what? The other fraction, and have what? 7 over 2. So therefore, once we have 7 over 2, we can go and then have what to say 10 multiplied by 7 giving us 70 over, and then we say 3 multiplied by 2 giving us 6. So therefore we can then ask our question, how many times does 70 goes into 6? If it doesn't go there into 6 and leave reminders, we try to see can we simplify this. Let's see, 70 divided by 6, it leaves a reminder. So therefore let's try to see if we can first simplify the fraction before we convert it into an improper fraction. So therefore this will be equals to 70 and 60, they are both even numbers. So if they are both even numbers, so therefore let's start with the most common factor, which is 2. So 70 divided by 2, it's going to give us 45. And then 6 divided by 2, it's going to give us 3. So therefore this is the most common factor, which is 2, which you can use to simplify this. So if you take a look, can 3 goes into 45 and do not leave a reminder? Nope, I don't think it will, because it's gonna still give us the same. Okay, 45 divided by 3, it can actually do now give us what we call a simplified version. But before that, let me just confirm if my calculation is actually 100% right. So I said 70 divided by 6 and it didn't leave a reminder, but we do have a common factor. So we do have a common factor, which is 2 for both of them, which is gonna give us the following fraction, which is 70 divided by 6. So I'm just gonna quickly confirm this on my calculator and see if it's gonna actually give us what I'm expecting here. So let me just quickly do that and then I'll come back to you guys. So I made a mistake. Here it's supposed to be 35, which I just noticed now, not 45. So we've got 35. So our final fraction is actually 35 over 3, which can therefore be converted now into a mixed number because 3 cannot go into 45. So therefore we're going to ask ourselves how many times does 3 goes into 35. So it's going to go 11 times, and therefore we can write our then improper fraction, our proper fraction, that is the remaining recurring, to say that if 3 goes times, then what is the remainder? So we're left with a remainder of 2 out of 3. So therefore our final fraction will be 11, 2 out of 3. So this is what the division rule or concept gets to be applied under this fraction. So this is all in terms of applying where we get to perform fraction using the 4 basic operation, which is our multiplication, division, subtraction, and addition. So I'm going to simplify them now for you. So in terms of addition and subtraction, identify if the denominator is the same. If the denominator is the same, add or subtract the numerators. If they are not the same, find the lowest common factor. Identify for each fraction what was the common factor used to get to the lowest common denominator. If, for example, it's 4 and then the lowest common factor is 12, therefore for that fraction it will be 3. So meaning that the numerator also have to be multiplied by 3. And then in terms of the multiplication, under multiplication, you just multiply your numerator and the denominator. Once you are done, then you actually get to simplify the fraction if it can be simplified. If it cannot be simplified, therefore, if it's an improper fraction, convert it to a mixed fraction. If it's a proper fraction, just leave it as it is. And then in terms of the division, which is the one that we just performed now, change the multiplication sign. First, convert everything that you're working with if they are not under proper or improper fraction. You don't work with mixed numbers or mixed fraction. We work with only proper and improper fraction. So you're going to convert that into those, and then from there change the division sign into multiplication. The second fraction that is dividing the other one gets to be swapped around, and therefore the numerator becomes the denominator and the denominator becomes the numerator. Once it's like that, now we are back to the multiplication. So we perform the multiplication rule with the numerator multiplied by the numerator, denominator by the denominator. And therefore we can simplify the fraction if it can be simplified. If it can't be simplified, we leave it as it is. And therefore, if it's an improper, we convert it to a mixed fraction. So during class, I did mention an activity to say that this was the activity, to say that if you are applying, you're running, you have got your own show, a company that have got two types of show 1 and show 2. So let me just see if I can be able to write this as fast as possible. I'll see if my dictator is working. If it's working, it's gonna be much simpler for me to actually write this quick down and fast. And I think my laptop is running low on memory, so it might be a big challenge for that. Okay, I don't think it's actually working. So I think it's not working. So I said you have got two shows. So you have got two shows, show 1 and show 2. So when you've got these two show 1 have 15,000 followers and subscribers for the show, who they watch it on a daily, and show 2 have 5,000 subscribers and viewers. So with these two shows, you go and apply, for example, under the BET broadcasting channel, to say that you want our shows to play on your site, and BET channel says that we only have got 90 minutes slot for the two shows that you have. So it is up to you on which show will take how many minutes and which other show will actually take how many minutes. So for you to be able to convert this and actually allocate these minutes into each show, you cannot just go and say I'm going to take 45 and give it to show 1, 42, 45 and give it to show 2. So you actually have to perform what we call a portion, to say let's allocate this 90 minutes according to viewers, because we have got more viewers from show 1 that are coming for this. So therefore let's give them so that they can get to be entertained more than those one for show 2, because these are the ones that are bringing us more money, because these have got the largest viewers. This show have got the largest viewers. So what you're gonna do is that you're gonna allocate the 90 minutes based on the viewers, and when you do that, you're gonna first ask yourself the question to say how many viewers do you have in totals for both your show 1 and show 2. So both have 20,000 viewers in total. So you have got 20,000 viewers in total. So to allocate for show 1, what you're gonna go and do is that you're gonna go and say 15,000, which is for show 1, out of the 20,000. What is the portion in terms of 100 percentage, to say that what share does it have towards